Wait!
Oh!
Wait!
What?
I just want to get ahead of this. If you're in the Philadelphia area, we're going to be at the Army-Navy game and have a huge footprint there at the tailgate, but also Friday night before the tailgate, we will be at Barstool Sansom Street from 8 to 10 for a happy hour. If you're in the Philly area, please come out and hang out. I think we're going to have some merch we're tossing around, and I just
We
love
need to
meeting
come
people.
up with a better name than happy hour, because 8 o'clock's not happy hour. I'm sorry. Like 5 to 6, 5 to 7, that's like happy hour. 4 to 6, maybe.
Moto
Early
hour.
evening goofing. How about early evening goof? It's a Friday edition here on Zero Blog 30, and today we have 3 rounds of the magazine. Round number 1, 2 of the most dangerous spies since 2000 have worked for the Cubans and Russians as high-ranking members of the Defense Intelligence Agency. They gave away nuclear secrets and much, much more. Blown away that I had never heard this story before. If you guys didn't read it before, like the episode starts, it's gonna blow your.
No, it's nuts.
It's gonna blow your shit away. Like it's legitimately insane. Like a movie that would be not even a Netflix movie. Like straight to the box office. This bad boy is starring like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. They come back together. There's a whole new marriage. It's going to be beautiful whenever they do that, but that's probably going to be the movie.
So you just want to reboot Mr. and Mrs. Smith is what you're saying.
Basically. I mean, that's essentially what it is. Just
Yeah.
nefarious. Yeah. Round number 2, Meritorious Mast is what one Ohio man needs and deserves after showing good initiative and the rare good judgment. When he was driving down the highway, he did something I think classifies good Samaritan. Even from like the biblical perspective of a good Samaritan, that's what this fella is.
We're going to get him his own hoodie. It says good initiative, good judgment.
Yeah,
Limited
he's probably
edition.
the only one. Yeah, that's a one-off. Those things don't happen very often at all. And finally, round number 3, a new report about sexual assaults in the military reveal a shocking truth. 45% in the military are sexually assaulted, and we're going to talk about that stigma. And if you've been in that kind of situation before and that's a trigger for you, we'll give you round number 3. We're going to you could step away there, and we will totally understand. And all that's going to be brought to you by our friends at WhistlePig. WhistlePig is the best whiskey in the business. It's wintertime, close to wintertime. Oh, before we really do this and tell you about WhistlePig, I need to tell you about what I am not looking forward to in Chicago the most. The most. And it came this morning. It was like 35 degrees here when I woke up, which is cold here. At 35 degrees is a wet cold here. It's never dry. It's always miserable. Getting out of the shower when it's cold is the worst. It's just the worst. The tile on your feet being cold, all that stuff. It's terrible.
You'll adjust, though. You'll adjust. You'll decipher some methods that you will adopt. Warm towels. Maybe you'll have a vent in your bathroom that blows the hot air. It'll happen for you.
I prepared myself today because I have a heater in my bathroom that turns on like a fan heater, and then I brought in a space heater. It was fucking toasty in there when I got out today. That was nice. If you want to be toasty on the inside, go with our friends at WhistlePig. They are delicious. They have bourbon. They have rye. All of it is fantastic. We love it. It's the only whiskey that I currently drink. It is fantastic, but it's a legendary duo because now they have the bourbon as well. If you haven't tried that one, it's amazing. You can try different types of cocktails. I've been following a bunch of TikTok all kinds of cocktail drinks. Have you guys ever heard of a creme brulee grapefruit whiskey?
No.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I think there's always a new cocktail out there.
Yeah, I want to try this one. So what they did is they took brown sugar, put it on a pretty thin slice of grapefruit, took the torch, did that a little bit, wrapped that around the rim of the glass, 2 shots of whiskey went into it, and then you dump the creme brulee. After a minute or 2, you dump the creme brulee grapefruit in there. I bet that shit's fucking fire. Like, you put that with a little bit of rye, the spice in the rye, it would be fantastic. You could do that by 100% for all, 100 for all for 100, piggyback 100% rye, and piggyback 100 proof bourbon is 100% of the good stuff. Get your bottle at shop.whistlepigwhiskey.com or at a local retailer. Fucking nailed it. Let's get going with the show today. But before we do that, Kate had an experience this week that we need to have a little school circle on me and Cons, Kate. So tell the people what happened to you this week.
I think I talked about in the last show how I got rear-ended in the Dunkin's drive-thru.
But there's some updates. Yeah.
Yeah, and we, completely not at fault. And USAA, the app is like, we have found you not at fault. And then I go take it in for the estimate, and I get the estimate back, And USA is covering a little chunk of it, but it's like, here you go, you owe $1,000 still. And I thought, oh, I better put this in the little USAA app so then they send it to the lady who caused the accident and she covers the $1,000. No. I did nothing wrong and I owe $1,000 fucking dollars.
Yeah,
That's what we call in the biz a deductible.
I've
Yeah.
never had to
Discovered
deal with this shit
deductibles.
before. Never. You know me. I go through and I just click the buttons. I'm like, I don't understand what any of the fuck this shit means. I call them as they're talking to me. My brain's like, do 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 do. It's like pointless. Same with. I'm just saying. Whatever. Holy fuck balls. So I owe $1,000 for what? So now I'm thinking I shouldn't even get it fixed. But then I'm like, then if I'm in another accident and I have my kid in the car, I probably need a full working bumper.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't. You
Definitely.
want to have
So
a
I
good
can't fuck
bumper.
around with
Yeah.
that. But holy fuck balls, what the fuck?
Yeah,
I
it is.
mean,
Even when my truck got stolen, I had to pay $250 when somebody stole my truck.
Dude, how does anyone afford anything?
Right, and
holy
like
shit.
you picked that $1,000 deductible because it's cheaper for you on a monthly basis.
Right.
If you do the lower deductible, your premium is going to be a little bit higher, and that's how they get you because you have people that aren't making if you're going paycheck to paycheck and that's your life, which so many families are in America right now. You have that shit going on. You're going to pick the lowest option, and then something happens like you're driving in a drive-through, and next thing you know, they're taking Katie's money
I
right
know.
before Christmas. Do they hate cash?
And
Is that
because,
what's going on?
we don't use the car all week long. Like, we barely use it. I take the train to work. Like, on the weekends is the only time we use it. So I was like, I don't need the craziest insurance. And it still costs a fuck ton of money every month. Like, it's still so expensive, and you still get fucked in the ass. USAA, fucking me in the ass.
I mean,
Sorry,
but-
I just had to
Ass
get that off
fucking
my
going
chest.
on, yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I have no propensity. I mean, I use USAA as well, but it's not like they're, somebody I wholly support. It's any insurance company would do this to you. There's no insurance company
I don't
that's
care.
not
The
gonna
only
have
way I'll
deductible.
change my tune is if they sponsor the pod.
Right, that's what I was just about to say, Kate. I love Rob Gronkowski as much as anybody else, but get him the fuck out of here. That
Get him
one
out.
guy that was supposed to be a dog handler and he's sitting in the front seat with his little Pomeranian, that dog is licking his face. Get down. Like, a dog handler would be giving his dog a period of instruction right there. USAA,
Amen.
I'll say it, stolen valor. I'll just say
Wow.
Anyway.
it. Yeah, I know. And get the fuck over yourself. They're never going to sponsor us because I say fucking shit every now and then, so I'm not worried about. Get over yourself.
Yeah, USAA.
They have these
Boo.
commercials that's like, you served, now let us serve you. Dude, you gave me a fucking checkbook and a debit card. That's not serving. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Credit union.
Anyway.
You're a for-profit bank. You're not even a credit union. For-profit.
My mid-30s entry
I'm
into
fired up.
adulting.
You know what is always, it doesn't really matter now because so much of everything we do is just online and paperless and what have you. But for the longest time, I've been with USA since I was 17, so you can do the math on that. Not having a physical bank, it was always a little bit of an annoyance when you had to do certain things, like maybe make a deposit or something. It was always annoying that you had to have like some
Because you
sort of
can't throw
workaround.
cash into your computer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I'd always
Like
have
Dave,
to
like Dave, whenever he gives him like a bonus, like hands him $5,000 with cash. What the fuck are you supposed to do with that at USAA?
right. You gotta like give it to
Keep it
somebody.
in
and be
your
like,
Rocky Boots like box in your closet.
No, you gotta give
Shout
it to
out
someone and say,
Rocky
"Hey,
Boots.
can you write me a check for this money that I'm about to
Yeah.
hand you?" It's
Like
ridiculous.
a fucking pour. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another side note before we start. I went down a big rabbit hole on the Bin Laden family yesterday.
Yeah, I
for
read that
this-
blog. It was great.
As one does.
As one does. I guess, I feel like we've gone down all the rabbit holes on Osama bin Laden and blah, blah, blah. I forgot.
Yeah,
who
we've
was-
covered it. Yeah.
We've covered him. We've talked to the guy who killed him. But I guess I
Katie's
didn't
BFF.
realize, it was like a refresher. I didn't realize he had like 26 kids.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was his fourth son that he had with that Osama bin Laden had with his first cousin. This guy, Omar, was recently speaking to the Sun UK about what it was like to grow up with bin Laden as your dad. And bin Laden's like terrorist buddies would torture the family pets. Like they would test out chemical weapons like on Omar's dogs and shit when he was a little kid, which is fucking crazy. And Osama bin Laden would beat his own kids, if they smiled too wide or all this crazy shit. But it was really interesting article, kind of. When it was time for him to, like, his dad was like, time for you to be a terrorist now. He's like, no, Papa, I want to be an artist. And he left. He went to...
Good for him. I mean, that's how the divide is in their whole family, though. Like, some of them are still radicalized, and some of them... One of the daughters went to, like, art school in France or some shit. Like, she got out of Afghanistan and Pakistan and went over there to do some art.
One of them lives in Florida and is like a big Trumper. They're everywhere, and they're very strange.
And one of them got murdered by the CIA.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But I just want to be clear on something, kid. So you're telling me that Osama bin Laden and his henchmen weren't a good influence on children and didn't treat children well?
You are correct. That's hard to believe,
Color
it's
shocked.
absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. But the guy has and you're reading it, he's got a ton of daddy issues. The one minute he's saying
you think?
He's saying bin Laden's a bad guy, and the next minute he's like, but I do wish we had gotten his body back for closure, and I do wish they hadn't killed him, and he flip flops between I
think you got to play that straight down the road. I mean, if you don't, you might have people coming after.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point.
That's ballsy. To go onto the sun in an international. I mean, we're talking about it now. I can't imagine the folks in Al-Qaeda are very thrilled with his son.
Oh, no. He's been hospitalized for hearing his dad's voice in his head and having psychotic breaks. But it was just kind of a fascinating read. And he wrote a book called Growing Up Bin Laden or something. It sounds like a TLC show.
Yeah,
Growing Up Bin Laden. But anyway, I'm sorry. It came
Probably
out 10 years ago.
Prime show, yeah.
But just really a fascinating, just a real strange bird, this guy.
I liked your
And he looks like he has a little bit of a My Chemical Romance type of vibe.
Absolutely.
He almost kind of comes across as a Borat character. He's got in one fit, he's got a ton of cornrows, and he looks like he's the lead singer of Korn. And then he's wearing all leather and whatever. Just a strange bird. But I went down that rabbit hole. And I said it reminded me of Mox in Thing, where he's like, I don't want your life. They had that conversation, but...
I mean, that's basically what he said.
But it was just fascinating. I guess I never really looked too deep into the family. The deeper I dug yesterday, Katie Rabbit Holes, it's kind of fascinating to track the entire family. I didn't know, chaps, Osama bin Laden's dad, or the leader of the top son of Osama bin Laden's dad, died near where you live in San Antonio in a plane crash. I didn't know that. It was Osama bin Laden's dad he was the leader of the family who was actually keeping the family pretty normal and holding it together. They were just rich Saudi Arabians. He accidentally crashed his plane in Saudi Arabia and died. And then the next in line, the oldest son, was supposedly a kind of normal dude who was a chill guy.
He came here. He was actually on Lackland Air Force Base at the Defense Language Institute. Yeah. I do remember this story now.
And then he crashed his plane in San Antonio, and he died, and then the family fell apart after that. And
because we used to, whenever I was at the dog school, I would have to take the junior Marines to the chow. The young kids that had never gone to the fleet, and they came in, you have to walk them to the chow or the cafeteria hall, whatever. I was sitting in there with another dude that had been in there for a while, another staff NCO, and he was like, hey, did you know that one of Osama bin Laden's son and his dad went to school here? And I was like, what? Because we shared that chow hall with the Defense Language Institute. Mm-hmm. I was blown away, man. I was like, fucking bin Laden's kid was here and his dad was here? What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, and that guy, the oldest son of the bin Ladens, who, Osama was a few down the line, was keeping the family together, and they said Osama bin Laden was afraid to get too squirrely and too crazy because he would get in trouble with his family. But once his older brother died in San Antonio in a plane crash, so his dad and his oldest brother both died in separate. Weird. Anyway, I didn't know any of that, and you'd think I would know it all by now.
No, I didn't know any of that stuff until I read your blog.
Either. Yeah, I mean, how could you keep up with 26 kids? I mean, that's
well, no, those are his own kids. Osama bin Laden's dad, Osama bin Laden, was one of 46 kids.
But I mean, that kind of shit, when you're Osama bin Laden had 26 kids, when you have 9 wives, you're just kind of knocking them out. That's not really.
You're not really a father so much as you're a sperm donor at that point.
Well, you know what they would do? Both his father and him, they would marry a woman, a lot of times a young woman, have a baby with her or whatever, and then divorce her.
A child is what you mean. A child.
And then divorce. Yes, they would marry child brides, bang them, have babies, and then divorce them. So they would only have a certain amount of wives at one time. It was a fascinating read. Anyways, that's Katie Rabbit Hole for you. Sorry.
I liked your one line though, Kate, where you're like, we're gonna have to let the Navy SEALs keep that W.
Yeah.
It's only fair.
Because he was complaining about how we killed his dad, but it's well, your dad fucked up pretty bad.
Yeah, it was a fantastic blog by Kate. Go search it. Just type in the search bar Kate, and it'll be one of the first ones that come up. It was a great blog. I really appreciated it, Kate. You did a lot of research on that, which is rare for Barstool Sports.
Rare for me.
Let's get going with round number 1, because we got another doozy. We're doing fucking we're not doing it, but we're covering Bin Laden, and we're covering some other spies that could have really fucked the United States up. Let's walk through this.
I'd say we're uncovering it, chaps, even though we didn't do the journalistic research.
No, we never do. We just aggregate,
No. In the late... Speaking of, where's this one from? Not that it matters.
This one
Stripes.
is from...
Stripes.
Well,
From
it's
Stripes.
from I did some research.
Whoa.
It's a combination of sources. It's Stripes. It's the actual Justice Department. It's the FBI's website. It's there's several different ones that I pieced
CIA
together.
chaps. Look at us go. All right, round number 1. In late 2000, the FBI was closing in on a suspected spy for Cuba working inside the Defense Intelligence Agency. Undercover operatives would soon begin trailing Ana Montes, the agency's top military and political analyst on Cuba, by car and on foot. They filmed her making calls on payphones, even though she carried a cell phone in her purse. They intercepted Montez's mail and inspected the trash outside her apartment in Washington.
Okay, before we move forward, I just want to... Montez, you need to remember this name, because there's going to be 4 names involved, and 2 of them are very close. Montez is the woman FBI agent she was applying to the DNI. That's who she is. Montez is the person who is going to be the expert on Cuba as we go forward.
Yeah. So it began as a classic tale of recruitment. In 1984, Montez had a clerical job in the Department of Justice. She often spoke openly against the U.S. government's policies towards Central America. Soon, her opinions caught the attention of Cuban officials who thought she would be sympathetic to their cause. So she met with them. Soon after, she agreed to help Cuba. She knew she needed a job inside...
Agreeing to do that after one meeting is insane.
I'm all in.
One meeting? Fuck yeah, let's do it.
You got to take me to Outback Steakhouse at least 4 times before I commit treason.
I need $200 in my back pocket.
Yeah.
It's called a retainer.
I need a pontoon boat, a trampoline, and some bloomin' onions first.
Large Mars, the party bar, taking you to Cuba.
Believe it. Anyway, she knew she needed a job inside the intelligence community to do any spy stuff, so she applied to the DIA, a key producer of intel for the Pentagon. By the time she started to work there in 1985, she was a fully recruited spy for Cuba. To escape detection, Montez never removed any documents from work electronically or in hard copy.
Should have learned from that one.
A lot of spies out there screwing that up. Instead, she kept the details in her mind and then would go home and type them in her laptop. Basically, she would do what I did before math tests, where I would stare at the book, stare at the answers, shut it, and then write. As soon as I got the paper, I would fucking write it all down as fast as I could, so I could.
Can you guys still do that? Let's say the Apple code pops up and you have to confirm your identity or whatever. It gives you a 6. I used to be able to look at it real quick and then type it in. Now I have to go back and forth 40 times.
Nice.
It's ridiculous.
No, I do too.
Dude,
Okay,
every time I'm getting on a
shot.
plane, I look at my ticket, it's like seat 24A, and I put it in my pocket.
But that's a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, 2 seconds later, I'm like, what seat am I in?
46 times by the time I walk from my seat at the terminal down the jet bridge, at least.
I'd be like,
I'm checking
7F, 7F, 7F.
So not proud of what she did,
Put it in
but
the
good for
pocket.
Ana
Wait, what?
Montez.
I mean, because she was 30 when this was going
Yeah,
on.
wow.
That's pretty good.
It's impressive. Then she transferred the information onto encrypted disks. After receiving instructions from the Cubans in code via shortwave radio, she'd meet with her handler and turn over the disks. Montez had been spying for nearly 17 years for Cuba, passing on so much classified info about the DIA personnel, as well as eavesdropping technology covertly installed on the island. So she's telling Cuba, here's where they're watching you, here's where
dude.
whatever.
And not only that, she's giving away human intelligence. She's giving up, where people are, not just Cuba. She's doing it all across the globe.
She's putting people in danger everywhere, and helping them stay one step ahead of anything we were trying to do. She compromised every method the United States used to surveil the Castro regime, according to current and former U.S. intel officials. That makes Montez one of the most damaging spies of her time, they said. And in hindsight,
you don't know who this is. It's crazy.
This is where most spies get caught because they're taking actual discs or info or whatever. It's this seems so simple. Oh, just remember it and go talk to somebody about it.
And
It's so simple.
Right. Like, it seems so simple.
Yeah.
But this story, I think it's buried because of 9/11. Like, nobody gave a shit about anything that was happening domestically. Everything was focused on Afghanistan and Iraq at the time.
Yeah,
It just
so
was.
opening an investigation against a decorated intel officer whose colleagues in the U.S. in the government, they called her the Queen of Cuba because they thought that she was helping them so much. Stay alert on Cuba, was painstaking and high stakes. Almost as soon as it began, the FBI nearly shot itself in the foot. The slip-up was inadvertent. When the Bureau began an intel investigation that might ruffle feathers in a foreign government or upset U.S. foreign policies, officials typically informed the State Department's Office of Foreign Missions. It was a sleepy outfit responsible for keeping tabs on travel by foreign diplomats and overseeing such things as plans to build new embassies or consulates in the U.S. Hardly the setting for an espionage thriller. And I feel like that's where you want to work in the government. Me, I'm just kicking back, tracking a couple planes, seeing what's going on with the embassy. I'm drunk most of the day. It's a treat. So
I don't know.
Why do you have
like
to be drunk most of the day?
it's
Because
just...
are you
just
doing
'cause
air
the
traffic
government?
controller? Yeah.
No, I'm just keeping tabs on the line. So Terry Holstad,
This is the second person.
Terry Holstad was then the chief of the Cuba unit at the FBI. So Terry Holstad, head of FBI Cuba focus, never thought twice when he described the secretive Montez investigation to the Bureau liaison, a veteran agent and longtime colleague named Robert Hansen.
And this is why it's confusing. We got Holstead and Hansen. Holstead he's the good one. Like,
So
he's the one
Holstad
that's
goes to
not fucked
Hansen.
up. Right.
Holstad goes to his buddy Hansen, who he trusts more than anything. Is like, you're not going to believe this. Anna Montez is spying for Cuba.
Which is what we do. Like, if something's happening at Barstool, we're like, "Whoa,
Did you
see
hear?
that? Blah, blah, blah." Yeah.
And then it
That's
turns
just
out
normal workplace
this would be
shit.
like it turns out you find out I've secretly been working for Deadspin and passing on all our juicy gossip.
So
Anyways,
that's where all those stories have been coming from.
Holstad tells
Katie
Hansen,
Mom.
like, holy shit, Anna Montez is spying for Cuba. Unbeknownst to Holstad and the entire rest of the FBI, Hansen was also a spy and had been spying for Russia for 20 years.
20 years. We got
gave-
17 to 20 years.
Yep, thousands of pages of classified documents to the KGB divulging secrets about U.S. nuclear war planning and weapons technology. He compromised the identities of dozens of human sources, at least 3 of whom were executed, according to a review by the Justice Department's Inspector General, which called him the most damaging spy in FBI history. Well, good for Anna for breaking the glass ceiling on that
Right,
and truly
yeah.
taking over as the most. Following
But
Hansen's
classic men having to one-up a woman. That's mansplaining. That's spy mansplaining.
Yeah, so Holstad tells Hansen, not knowing Hansen's this evil, horrible spy for Russia, about Montez only a few months before Hansen gets arrested. So now he knows, fuck, this guy had months to warn Anna about this investigation, Montez about everything that's going on. I said, oh my God, I wonder if he passed that information to the Russians, Holstad recalled in a recent interview. The precarious twist in the Montez case was discovered and detailed in a new book by investigative journalist Jim Popkin. He has written extensively about Montez, whom he called the most important spy you've never heard of, in a 2013 feature for the Washington Post. The end to Montez's espionage career was precipitated in part by September 11, 2001. The DIA was preparing to assign Montez to a team that would have access to info about locations the U.S. might bomb in Afghanistan. The FBI already had enough evidence to arrest her. Retired Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson, then the DIA director, told Popkin that he called the Bureau and demanded they take Montez off the street. In 2001, so only a couple weeks after September 11th, Montez...
10 days.
Yeah, 10 days.
days.
Montez was arrested at DIA headquarters and escorted out of the building in cuffs. Senior Cuban government officials publicly praised Montez and saluted her work, portraying her as a fellow warrior in the fight for socialism against the Reagan admin, backing of anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua.
And this story is back in the news for one reason and one reason alone. She's about to get out of prison. For her 25-year sentence, if you have good behavior, they'll take a little bit off.
I can't believe they're letting her out already.
I know.
That
like
seems...
the other guy got life in prison without the possibility of parole for what he gave over to the Russians. She got a 25-year sentence.
I feel like we've had people in prison longer for small weed offenses, which is
right.
crazy.
She's going to be out I think they said May is when her actual date is. Because of the federal crime, it's not like a state crime where you can do half of your sentence, essentially. If it's a federal crime, you're doing at least 90 to 95% of that sentence. So doing 25 years here and getting it knocked down to like 22, 23, that's pretty common. But fuck, man. Like, how, if you're not going to keep this person in jail, how are we keeping other people in jail?
Right.
Like, if anybody deserves to be in prison, it's somebody who gave our secrets away to the Cubans and the Russians.
To some countries that might be classified as enemies of the United States. But this is a great example of why I never went to work for like the CIA or the DIA. This was the sole reason. I would just be paranoid every day. It's like, you think like your best bud that you get lunch with on Tuesdays, and then it turns out they've been spying for Russia the whole entire time. You can't trust anybody in any of these agencies. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie with Al Pacino, The Recruit, and Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's like lying about everything. Like, it would just drive you nuts.
Departed, too.
Yeah. Exactly. That's another example. Yeah, exactly.
You know what made me, how they were tailing Anna Montez on foot and in her car and following her all the time? If that was me, in hindsight, if I was Anna Montez, I knew I'd be thinking about all the farts I did.
Yeah.
Oh, God, did they hear me fart? That'd probably be my main concern.
Because that's what you do. You get in the car by yourself. You got to rip that ass.
You fucking go.
Here's a question.
A ring sting.
Here's a question for both of you. And I think this is a question maybe a little more specific to folks who maybe served in the military. Do you think at any point in your life...
This is a good podcast for that.
Yeah, I thought so.
True. You're in the right place, pal.
Do you think at any point in your lives you've come across somebody who did some covert things for the United States? And while you think about that, yes, for the United States. While you say that, I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman in my life that it came to light like a year or two ago that he spent 10 years of his life doing black ops. And I won't say any more. Maybe one day we can get him on the show to tell his story, because we were just like having a normal conversation over lunch, and then like he kind of like starts going into this story. He's like, did I ever tell you about XYZ? I was like, he had me enthralled for like 45 minutes doing all this crazy stuff where he just basically ceased to exist as a person for 10 years. So I'm just curious if you guys think you've come across anybody like that. Because I bet you have.
I probably maybe have come across them. I remember when I was serving, a family friend of ours who I don't even want to give to, they texted me out of the blue a few times. I didn't talk to them very often. They were much older. Texted me out of the blue a couple times to tell me about big hits the U.S. was about to pull off. And because they had a friend in the FBI or CIA or something who knew it was about to go down and who had told them. And it was like, and they weren't in the government at all. They were just like a guy. And I was like, that's concerning that they're telling you and that you're telling me, a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps. I was like, that's weird. Huh. And then the one time, one of the things they said did happen. And I was like,
Yeah. And that's what really fucks you up when it does happen. Because we get people like tips and things like that, like what happened with the Bonham Richard. Like we'll get information about that in my DMs. But there's some things that happen, you're just like, holy shit. Like there was one moment where it was like, okay, we're about to have the last plane leave Afghanistan. And the last plane, like the news came out like 2 minutes after, like the last plane had left the airway in Afghanistan. I was like, so this is legit news. And he said that he had worked in a lot of S2 shops, which is Intel, and they had a big meeting that they were going to try, and it seemed super realistic at the time, that the Taliban was going to meet and essentially like their State of the Union address whenever America was going to go. And he had told me that President Biden had authorized a Moab on that spot where all of the leadership was. And I was like, oh my God.
And a Moab, for those who don't know, chaps.
It sounds far-fetched. What's that?
A Moab, for all those who don't know.
Mother of all bombs.
Mother of all bombs. Like it's a huge cave-busting bomb that no matter how fortified it is, this thing is getting through. So if that happened, every single one of the Taliban leadership, it'd be like blowing up the State of the Union. Like that's what was going to happen. It happened so. I thought the information was so real. I called a congressman that I know and was like, have you heard of this shit? Like, was talking to him on Signal. And he was like, I heard something about that. I don't think it's going to happen, because if he did, that would, Biden would be.
Yeah.
I mean,
that would cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, that would cause a lot of issues. I mean, but I'd support that.
They're just saying, like,
you think kill everybody in the Taliban?
You'd
Good.
think
I'm
these
okay with
people are
that.
so secret squirrel, but I bet you'd be amazed at how many like late night parties and somebody's drunk and is like, just between you and me, you know what's happening soon? Like, dude, it happens. It happens all the time. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that was the
Josh,
other reason.
that
was the
would
other
be
reason
me,
I
by
didn't-
the way. That's why I'm not
Yeah.
in the FBI.
That's
You
why I
guys
didn't
want to
do it,
hear a
'cause
tasty morsel?
I'm great at keeping secrets, but I don't like keeping secrets, if that can make sense to you.
Yeah.
See, Cons, I think that both of us, if I didn't have tattoos and you don't have to, I think you would be the perfect person to do that. You're like a 5'11", 6 foot tall white guy who, if you shaved your mustache, you would look like every other 5'11", 6 foot white guy. I mean, you would be picked for like the Marine Corps silent drill team for how much you look like everybody else. Like, and it's not a bad thing. That's truthful how it goes
Handsome.
down. I know one guy. The only dude that I know for sure is when I was in Iraq, he used to be a force recon guy, and he came back over to help us out. He was moving back to the Fleet Marine Forces. Well, whenever he became an officer, he went to the University of Texas. When he went to, I think I've told this story before, but he went to the University of Texas and studied Middle Eastern studies. So he learned both Farsi and Arabic. Whenever he went, his entire goal for this, and it was approved by the Marine Corps Education Command, which is bizarre that it went through the Marine Education Command. He ended up having this pitch to them. He had found this extremist website and had been talking to people on the extremist website. They got him a school seat in essentially like what would be terror camp, I guess it was. And so he went to Egypt, is where this took place, and it was a Wahhabi Muslim group that he was like very radical, very extremist. And he said that he stayed there for like a period of 6 months, like getting essentially indoctrinated.
The
And whenever-
craziest part of that was, though, remember he said it was all terrorism, but the one fun part of that camp was they had that big blob in the lake where you could jump on it and the other guys would
like
fly
on
off.
heavyweights.
It
Yeah.
was like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. And he was pretty fat, so whenever he would jump on it, it would send people
All the
through their
terrorists would,
absolute
all the
favorite.
terrorists would go, wee!
They're like, yay! Troy is his name, right?
yeah.
Couldn't remember it. So Troy is his name. And he went to Egypt and did this. And he said that he stayed there for a time period of 6 months, and they were burning American flags. They had all kinds of anti-American shit going on. And this is a guy who's in Force Recon, who had deployed 2 or 3 times already. And so he's there, and he was walking down the streets of Cairo, like whenever he had a break, walking down the streets of Cairo, and he saw a young woman that had she was wearing short sleeves instead of like full covered. And he was going down the street and he was like, look at this fucking slut with her hands out and shit. And then he was like, wait, no. Troy loves slutty girls. And so he said that he walked down the street straight to the embassy and was like, hey, this is my name, my social security number, all that shit. They brought him inside, looked it up, and it was all true. And he came back
He was
home
like,
and
I've
went
been
back
here too long, it's starting to get to me.
Yeah, he was like,
yeah.
I'm about to get indoctrinated for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy
Crazy.
shit balls.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's the example. I think there are people in your lives that you probably have come across,
And you never know.
and
Yeah.
you would never know it. And maybe they're not like, I'm not saying like a best friend or even a close friend, like maybe just an acquaintance. I'm telling you, I bet you there's somebody in your life who's done some secret squirrel stuff, to use your words there, Kate. And I just want to know all about them.
Okay, and I think one aspect that you'll appreciate this, because you've talked about it before after MEPS, when you first get to boot camp and you have the moment of truth and you think that they're going to find out every single time that you smoked weed. If you can go and be in 17 years given secret information, nuclear information,
Yep.
like the whereabouts of our people, and you could do that with Cuba, and then you have another dude at the same time that's doing it with Russia, I think that brings the intelligence community under very much like the scrutiny of people, because if it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like about once a month we have a story about this, like we can't believe it, there's a Navy guy that went over to Russia, now he's giving them secrets. It happens all the time. That being said, it doesn't matter if you smoke weed, just lie about it when you go to boot camp.
Yeah,
They
please
can't
lie.
figure out
Lie.
Yeah, they can't
Lie,
figure
lie.
out they can't figure out you're a spy. They're not going to figure out that you smoked a little weed when you're in California at 17.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. All right, well, I'm going to make a command decision here on the show. We're not going to do any more rounds. That's it. I think that
Whoa.
is the full show. The rest of it we'll cover in some save rounds, but we're not going to go nearly as deep into that. Because that was a long round, and I thought it was really good, so I wanted to be a star of the show. Secondly, I'll give the stories real quick. The one about Ohio, this guy was driving down the road in Ohio, and the FedEx driver that was there he came out, was throwing out the packages, which I don't necessarily blame you during Christmas season. It's a lot of packages. I can understand being fed up.
Driver helper here. UPS driver helper, holiday driver helper.
Did you have holiday rage ever, Kate?
I mean, yeah. People letting their dogs run at you and be like, "Don't worry, she's friendly," and the dog's like, ripping your shoelaces apart. And you're like, "Are you sure, ma'am?" Stepping in dog shit. It was mostly all dog related. Oh, another time going down like a mile-long driveway with this huge fucking package on. What do you call it? The two wheels.
Trolley.
Dolly.
A dolly?
Yeah.
And getting it all the way down there with my driver. It took 2 of us to get it there, and the mom comes running out. "Wait, can you put it back on the truck and bring it back another day? My son's home right now. I don't want him to know. It's a Christmas present." It's like, no, lady. And then she's like, "I'm going to call UPS, blah, blah." It's like, bitch call. I'm making $12 an hour.
UPS delivered my package. They delivered it. What a piece of shit.
And then on my final day, the UPS driver in the zone just south of us got shot by a bunch of people. And it was
it's bad.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're doing holiday goofing at one of those places, Amazon, UPS, whatever, you have a bad day and you start yoking different boxes out down the highway, I kind of understand it, because that's a shitty thing to have to do during holiday season, and nobody appreciates these folks, and they should appreciate these folks.
Absolutely.
It's a hard job.
He's throwing different packages down the highway. One guy stops after he sees the packages, picks up the packages, and he's like, "You know what? These addresses are on here. They're all pretty local. I'm going to deliver them myself." So he went to all these different houses for no reason at all, would not accept tips, payment, or anything. He was like, "I just want to do something nice for you guys. I'm sure whatever's in this package is something that you really need." Meritorious Mast for this guy.
Meritorious Mast.
I mean, just
nice.
Unbelievable. Like, that's the holiday.
What a nice gentleman.
Every now and then, one of my apartment neighbors will, when I get a pack, will leave it at my door. We'll see it down in the mailroom and just bring it up to my door. And I never know who it is, but I'm always like, "Oh man, people are so good." Like, there are a lot of good people.
Yeah, there's still a lot of good in
there.
this world.
Yeah.
But you know what's crazy to me? We just write a bunch of numbers and names on a box. We give it to somebody, and it gets somewhere else in the country, or even the world for that matter.
In 2 days.
Yeah. That's
How?
nuts. That's nuts. That we
I was
have
watching
that
one package. I was watching one package that went from New Jersey all the way to here, San Antonio, in like a day and a half. I don't understand how that works.
No.
Like, what do they do? How do they know? And also, if you got weed and you want it mailed, they don't care there either. Like, they don't give a shit about weed at the UPS. It's wild. Like, the things that you learn as you get older, it's crazy. You're all paranoid about having any type of weed pen going through TSA. They don't give a shit about that. They don't care about none of it. We do need to talk about one other article that came out. It was very, very important, and it covers a rough subject. So I told you at the beginning of the show, if it's a trigger for you to hear about sexual assault or any of that, please step away, because we're going to talk about that for a few minutes. I want to do a more long-form version of this, but this came out, and I want more information before we continue to go down this road. But I think that there's a lot of this information that you need to hear. So they set the scene. We're not going to go.
By the way, this is by The Intercept by author journalist Nick Terse, and I'm going to reach out to him and see if he'll come on. But kudos to them for looking into this and talking about it, because all we hear is about women's side of things, and that women are getting assaulted in the military. Women. Statistically speaking, if you look at the numbers, because there are so many more men than women, more men are getting assaulted than women. And if you look at it, and because the shame and the stigma is even greater, I mean, it's horrific for women in the military to come forward with anything. I mean, multiply that for a man. Like, if you've served, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. And even just in general culture, really. So
so that's again, it goes to our culture largely.
Hold on, before we do that, let me tell what the story is about, and then we'll suss it out after. So this story is based on the actual story, I guess the novel of the story is about a a young Marine at the time whose name is Justin Rose, and he had just gone on his first deployment to an area called Djibouti, Africa. And when the war and terrorism first kicked off, Djibouti was a big launching point for a lot of stuff. I had several different dog handlers that I served with that went there as well. Well, he was on watch one night, came back to his room, and was falling asleep. And one of the other people in his platoon, he woke him up, and he was touching his penis.
It was New Year's Eve, and he had been at the cantina. They were all drinking. And he wakes up in his bed kind of groggy. You know when you wake up and you're drunk and you're like disoriented?
Yeah. Where am I? Yeah.
This guy, Stanton, is like stroking his penis.
Right.
He chases him, and he finds Stanton in his bed pretending to be asleep, and he's like, I'm certain it was this motherfucker. He goes to his team leader, Corporal, and the first question his corporal asks him, are you sure you're not making this up? From there,
that's a failure of Marine Corps.
Yeah.
That's a failure on the Marine Corps' part.
And
there is no way, shape, or form a sexual assault should be routed through a fucking corporal. Like, I'm a firm believer that if something like this happens, immediately to the company commander. That should be where the chain of command starts, company commander.
But also,
Absolutely.
it should be none of the above.
Right,
And
right.
I mean, unfortunately, thanks to Vanessa Guillen's family, that has finally, you don't have to go through your command anymore. But in 2005, at the time that this happened to Rose, you had to go through your command. And that entailed, like Rose talks about it, he had to recount the story of being sexually assaulted again and again to his squad leader, his platoon sergeant, the chaplain, over and over and over, and placing your trust in your buddies when you know that the Lance Corporal Underground talks, that the staff sergeants all talk, like everyone's supposed to keep this quiet, and it's
Nobody
almost like
keeps it
HIPAA
quiet.
rules. Nobody does. So he's telling this. Next thing you
Because
know,
you're telling a fucking corporal.
Rose was branded the Marine that had been groped and hadn't done anything about it. And it was like his fault that he didn't kick Stanton's ass. It was his fault that it happened to him. And he became, here he is, this guy in a foreign country, far from home, who gets sexually assaulted. And he becomes the laughing stock, the joke, and it's just this story.
That time in 2005, I 100% believe this.
Yes.
Because that was absolutely the culture that was going on. And it probably still is. I mean, the Marine Corps doesn't really change that much over time. I imagine there's still a lot of this stigma that goes on, and it's bullshit. What happened is he did end up filing a report and doing exactly what was right, and then in the court-martial, he was declared innocent. The person that did it, they didn't think that he did it. He spent no time in the brig, none of that stuff. This guy went on, and we'll have the author, I'm sure we'll have the author on the show to give much more details about how terrible this was and the information that's behind it. Well, the guy that was assaulting this Marine Rose ended up doing it several more times over the next couple years and ended up getting like 45 years in prison. But it wasn't because of what initially happened to Rose. And if that would have happened, maybe that stops all those 3 or 4 other people from, it definitely does, 3 or 4 other people from getting sexually assaulted.
I know too. The culture of it. A lot of times, I think the way sexual assault looks and happens to males in the military, there's all sorts of different ways. But I think a lot of the times it comes across as hazing and horsing around and later stuff. I heard stories of a guy who passed out and his buddies put a broom handle up his ass.
Or a Roman helmet.
Guess what? That's fucking assault. Like that guy probably is going to have to hold that. Yeah, it's fucking insane.
That's what I was going to say earlier. I think it speaks to our culture in the military that is still very prevalent even in 2022, and to an extent our culture as a society and larger, but it's still very much associated with our genders. And if you're a male, you're supposed to be tough and you won't get taken advantage of. And if something like this were to happen, I would say most guys are embarrassed to bring that to anybody because it makes it look like you're weak or, you were taken advantage of. So, you're the problem when obviously in some cases that's just not the case. And it's crazy to think, but it's just something I think that will take I hate to say it, it's going to take a long time for the culture in the military to change. I mean, don't ask, don't tell, repealed just in 2011, sorry. And that's not like a light switch you flick off like, oh, okay, now everyone's just really okay with people who are non-heterosexual in the military. No, like you still have these people come from all walks of life, all parts of the country who still view heterosexuality, homosexuality through a certain lens, and that doesn't just change overnight, much like this culture in the military of sexual assault doesn't change overnight. So it's going to take a while. I hate to say it, but it needs more people like these individuals speaking up and talking about it if anything's going to change.
Well, I remember when I was in, one thing that was actually impactful and I think did help and make a difference, that like, and I hope it did, we had a Marine come speak to us. He had since gotten out, but it was like a safety stand down. They had a Marine come speak to us and talk about the time he went out in San Diego, got drugged, and was raped by a man. And the story of how he was terrified to tell anyone, how nightmarish the process was, blah, 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 but that he did come forward and the man did end up getting in trouble, blah, blah, blah. But to hear this, like, and the Marine had been like a high-speed, like, badass Marine, and to hear him speak about it and be like, you need to talk about this. If this happens to you, you need to, like, you know, whatever. Yeah. I feel like there should be more of that. But coming forward is also more difficult because male claims, in this article, male claims consistently get rejected at a higher rate than those of women. So it's like, it's hard enough to come forward and then...
And that's she's referring to the VA, too.
To the VA, like, yeah.
Whenever you do, because you can file for compensation because you have mental stressors from what happened to you involved in a sexual assault, which is absolutely appropriate and it should happen. But some of this other data from this article is crazy.
Insane.
It's one of the aspects that sexual assault of men in the military is also widespread, vastly underreported. Each day, on average, more than 45 men in the armed forces are sexually assaulted, according to the last Pentagon estimate.
Yep.
For women, it's 53 per day. So that number is not much of a disparity. And like what Kate is saying, that means that there's a shit ton more men that are getting us. And you don't have to do a comparison.
Like statistically, more women get assaulted, but numbers-wise, more. Yeah,
numbers-wise, it's men. And I don't think that the numbers. Sexual assault should stop. No matter what gender you are, no matter what sexual orientation, none of that shit matters. Sexual assault in the military is an epidemic.
But,
and the people at the DOD can say what they want to. It's an absolute epidemic, and I would say it's on par with suicide.
Yeah, but to Kate's point earlier, I think you need to educate people on what constitutes sexual assault because so much is just dismissed as... that's guys being dudes, just horseplay, whatever, locker room type environment, what have you, when by the letter of it, that's a lot of times sexual assault. And
the person has the choice then of either laughing it off,
right,
but they're not okay. But if they say something, then they're victimized even further, which is difficult.
Right,
and I'm not saying it's a small fraction of it probably, but... And
then the other thing too, especially I think among men, is if you do come forward, you get ostracized. Like, well, screw him. He's not part of the team. You know, he wants to go run and tell, you know, a platoon sergeant or first sergeant what's going on in the barracks on Friday night, and he doesn't know how to have fun. And it gets all twisted around that you just perpetuate that culture where I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be odd duck out here.
Yeah. And let's be honest, in that time period, people did play fuck games with each other. Like, there was so much credit carding going on, like where you drugs to your hand. There's all of that stuff going on. I heard a story after I got out from a Marine that was dealing with the same stuff. He's like, dude, and we were eating at like Twin Peaks, something ridiculous. We were at Twin Peaks and he was like, you know, all those games that we used to play and like everything was fine. I was sexually assaulted when I was a kid and it was terrible for me. Like anytime we played those games. And we don't think about that.
No.
Like, that is not something that you think about. An adult who is sexually assaulted or molested whenever they are a kid growing up and how terrible that experience would be. And nobody should have to go through that. No matter what your background is, you just shouldn't.
Yeah.
Let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. Nick, we'll start with you.
Save rounds. Just want to make sure everyone heads over to the YouTube. Please subscribe. And I know we talked about it over the group chat the other day, but we are entering like the holiday, the Christmas season. We talked about it. Want to get everyone's take on regular Christmas lights, meaning white, versus colorful lights. Where do we stand on this?
I am a firm believer that children love colorful lights way more than white lights. So what we have done in my house is we will do colorful lights during the day so the kids can get that aspect of the colorful lights, and then when it's nighttime and it gets dark, we switch over to the white lights.
I just think white lights in general look better.
But
yeah, the aesthetic is
now,
better.
Cons, do you think that you will,
you
know, with kids, would you make
No.
a concession? Okay.
No.
Yeah, I would. I would make the concession until they turn 5. I
like
think-
the big fat Christmas story colorful lights on the tree with like the old school tinsel. I do. I fucking love it. I'll always have a tacky ass house.
Tinsel. Oh.
My
Tacky
dad,
ass house.
growing up, my dad, he didn't patent it. He should have. He tied 2 long broomsticks together with like the brooms snapped off. And then he put like a Y shape of like an actual twig from the yard that was in a Y shape. He like duct taped that. And he would put the lights on it. He would use that to put the lights way up in the tree.
Oh, smart.
It was
Yeah.
smart,
Wow,
but there
that's
was
real
no
smart.
rhyme or reason to it. There wasn't a swirl. It was just like a nest of lights in each tree.
Yeah, but you know what? Once it's dark out, you can't see that. All you
Yeah.
see is the light, so it looks great.
But yeah,
when
it was always crazy colors, for sure.
When I moved to Chicago, I just saw this new invention that they put up, and they essentially like put it, like there's the over part of your roof, like I forget
Yeah.
the awning of your roof, I guess. They will put these things permanently onto your house, and they'll do it like exactly how Christmas lights are supposed to be. You can't see them the rest of the year, but whenever it's Christmas time, you never have to take them down ever again, and they just stay up. That is
Ah.
fucking clutch.
That
if
is
you're going to
cool.
be in the same house for a while.
Noted.
All right, Cons, what about you?
Okay, a few things. Buckle up. Number 1.
Which I'll allow since you had none last week.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. I saw this week Tom Hanks starting a coffee company to support veteran organizations. So he's going to make coffee, and then the proceeds are going to go to select veteran organizations. So now is as good a time as any for Tom Hanks to come on the show. So
I only drink Stella Blue, unfortunately.
yeah, so we won't be promoting his coffee, but maybe we'll promote the organizations he's helping. I
Fair
don't know.
enough. Fair.
Fair enough.
We have a very, very cool t-shirt and hoodie design for Army Navy, for the Army guys. It's a play on the original Rocky movie poster, so that's for sale right now in the Barstool
I hate
store.
to say it, it's a cool ass shirt. I'll say.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
cool
when you
shirt.
know it's good. That's when you know it's good, when even they'll admit that
I would
it's
never
good.
wear it, but it's a
Yeah,
cool
you
shirt.
admit it's good. And then lastly, so everyone's doing the whole Spotify Wrapped and different things about the music, and I think it's fun to see what people listen to. I've always said, like, I would love walking down the street if everybody had a bubble over their head so you could see what song they were listening to, or podcasts or whatever. But then, and I think I might have said this on the show before, so if I'm repeating myself, sorry, but I always think about this. Chaps made a suggestion of an artist for me to check out based on other artists that I listen to. I was like, all right, yeah, cool, I'll check that out. But to me, music these days is both exciting that we have access to so much music, but it's also overwhelming. Like, it gives me anxiety to think how many artists and musicians are out there that I don't know about that I would really like their music, but it's like, but I got to listen to all this other music first before I get to that new music. But then there's just this endless amount of new music and it'll never end.
Well, that's why
So
they
it's
do
just,
the
like,
suggested
crazy.
for you. And you just click that and you just tool around a little.
Did you like my suggestion, Cons?
Yes, I did. But that's my point. I did. So it's like,
Yeah.
geez, it's just so much music out there that I don't know. It's but maybe
And
that's
Kate
exciting.
recently got back into
I got
music,
back
so-
into music.
I know,
And
it's
the
crazy.
internet.
That still might be one of my favorite things that Kate has
back into
ever said.
music.
On the Chops and Kate show one night, she was like, I said, have you heard this band? And she was like, no, I'm just kind of getting back into music. It was one of the most insane things
Yeah.
I've ever heard somebody say. Is that it, Cons?
Yes, that's it.
Katie?
Ooh. Shout out to Annika Hustler. Chaps, you blogged this. The Marine at the Lakers
Oh, yeah.
game who chugged a beer out of her prosthetic leg. Fucking badass. Super cool. I saw a video of where she had tumors in her foot and everything and had to get her leg removed. And the video of her waking up from surgery and just straight up goofing with her family and just being hilarious. Like, that's a Marine's Marine right there. So shout out Annika Hustler. I love stories
what a
like that.
hard
who
decision
just-
to make, too.
Hard
yeah.
decision to make, but just the stories of spirit like that are just fucking very inspiring. So kudos. Would love to have a beer with her sometime straight out of the leg.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we can get her on the show, too. I think
Yeah.
we need to hear her story about how she found out that she had cancer
Yeah.
so early.
Yeah.
She was pretty fortunate there that she found it. I don't know.
Except for
fortunate,
losing
but-
the leg. Yeah, that's
Right.
unfortunate.
Besides
right.
that,
Mhm.
yeah. I have two things. I've been scrolling on Reddit incessantly lately. One fact that I saw, and today I learned. Think about how many animal species there are in the world. Like, in the Amazon, all across the world, how many there are. Did you guys know that 25% of all species on the planet are beetles?
What?
Beetles. 25% of all animals on the planet are in the beetle family.
So there's
I would've said-
8.7 million species on Earth.
Crazy.
That
Yeah.
includes, though, species can be plants, fungi. I don't know what a chromist is. A chromist, animals.
Under the genus of beetles, 1/4 of all animals. Craziest
What?
stat
Where
I've
did you
ever
see
heard,
that?
probably. It was on National Geographic.
Snapple cap?
No, I mean, even so, don't you dare disparage Snapple Cap's facts. How
Dude,
dare
Snapple
you,
facts
Kate?
are great. What's
How-
wrong with
I-
you?
Oh my God, Kate.
What is wrong with
Disgusting
you?
behavior, really. My goodness gracious.
But
and the
I
second
would have.
one.
Sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
just would have said 25. I would have said like birds or something. That would have made
Man.
sense.
I
would
to me.
too,
But
yeah.
You know what I
beetles?
used to
No.
crush that was great? Lion's Head Beer had the quiz in the cap. It had like the little word quizzes. I miss that.
Oh, Lion's Head beer. I don't even know if I've heard of that.
Oh, man. Real.
Is it a
She's-
Pennsylvania thing?
She's talking crap about Snapple, and then she throws out this random ass beer that nobody's heard of.
If IKYKY, if you know, you know.
Okay.
Okay. Second story.
Okay.
Okay.
Have you guys ever seen those Listerine tabs? That
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you
Love 'em.
Like, they're
Yeah.
great, right? Like it's
Yes.
almost like mouthwash
Huge in
whenever
high
you're
school
just out.
before making out in the back seat of your mom's minivan on the way home from the movies.
And not the paper ones. Have you seen like the actual tablets where it's like you would push it through, like if you were getting a piece of medicine out?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
where
yeah.
it has the silver and you push them out. Okay.
Oh yes, yes.
So we've had like a 12-pack by our garbage can for a while. It's like where our junk drawer is essentially. So things are just stacked up there. I came up from doing a podcast or doing an interview, something like that, where I had essentially talked for like an hour and a half. And so my throat was really dry. I was like, I'll just take one of these. It'll be fresher. I'll feel more fresh. There was another thing of tablets that was sitting right by it. And I thought it was the
Acid.
same tablet. I popped the thing, put it into my mouth. It was a fucking Keurig thing that strips all the old coffee out of your Keurig, like
Oh.
the acid. And
Oh.
I put it in my mouth, and it started dissolving instantly and like foaming. And I was like, oh my God. And I ran to the sink, was like spitting it out in the sink. And I was like, what should I do? And I thought like diluting it. So I just took the biggest cup that was by the sink, filled it, and like chugged it like it was the night end at boot camp where you have to hydrate with a full canteen. I chugged that motherfucker so much. And then Annalise came in. She was like, why are you drinking like 2 huge things of water in a row? Like, what's wrong? I was like, well, I ate fucking acid. I ate this
Yeah.
soup. I ate this soap. And now I feel like I'm going to die. And she just fucking loses it laughing. She was like, of all the stupid ass shit that you've ever done since we've been married in 13 years, this is number one. And I tasted that soap or whatever it was for like a day and a half. And I
Yeah.
waited to tell you guys because I wanted to tell you on the show.
That's
Damn.
unfortunate.
It was
So
fucking
your
ridiculous.
mouth's looking very clean. I was
Yeah.
gonna
Thank you. I
say.
appreciate that.
Nice.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll be back here on Monday. See you then. Sound like a treat.
Wait,
Oh.
wait.
What?
I just want to get ahead of this. If you're in the Philadelphia area, we're gonna be at the Army Navy game and have a huge footprint there at the tailgate. But also, Friday night before the tailgate, we will be at Barstool Sansom Street from 8 to 10 for a happy hour. If you're in the Philly area, please come out and hang out. I think we're gonna have some merch we're tossing around, and I just
We
love
need to
meeting
come up
people.
with a better name than happy hour because 8 o'clock's not happy hour. I'm sorry. Like 5 to 6, 5 to 7, that's like happy hour. 4 to 6, maybe. 8
Moto
Early
hour.
evening goofing. How about
Yeah.
early evening goofing?
Early
Okay.
evening goofing, a moto hour.
As we're gonna have. I think that's only the second time in like 400 or 500 and something episodes that we've talked after Sound the Retreat. So it was very important
Yeah, I'm
that
sorry.
you guys come out and hang
Thank
out
you.
with us. All right, Sound the Retreat.
Wait. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Okay.